in the NFC, I don't know who you pick.
Yeah, it's wide open.
Yeah,
wide open.
I think there's not that many teams. There's certainly not as many teams as the AFC has at the top of the heap in terms of what everyone would say the top tier teams. And every team that you would think might have a chance, you look at their quote warts, and you look at Green Bay, and you say, okay, they've got Aaron Rodgers, and they're probably going to win a lot of games. But what's that receiving core going to look like?
Let's pop on our guy Howard Balzer and talk about it. Nobody covers the NFL like that, man. Welcome in to his Football Playbook debut. Good morning, Howard, out in the desert. How are you today, brother?
Doing well. I'll say one thing. First of all, you shouldn't be getting me this hungry this early in the morning. That's number one. Number two, and this has been going on now for a month, I don't understand this incredible love for the San Francisco 49ers. And I'm not saying they don't have a chance to be a pretty good team, but I've seen rankings where they're ranked as the fourth best team in the NFL. I mean, we have no clue what their quarterback situation is going to look.
But Howard, when you have a top-ranked defense and a top-ranked running attack, you have a shot.
I'm not saying hey, just about anybody has a shot. No, I shouldn't say that. A lot of teams have a shot. But all I'm saying is you still have to have the quarterback. Now, you're right about the running game, and that's what they're probably hoping will happen, is that they won't have to ask Trey Lance to do more than he is capable of yet, because they have that good running game. And they'll just say, hey, don't make the plays to beat us. But close game, fourth quarter, you need a play from the quarterback. Who knows what he's going to do? So I'm not saying it can't happen. But you know what I think a big part of it is, Rick? In the NFC, I don't know who you pick.
Yeah, it's wide open.
Yeah,
wide open.
I think there's not that many teams. There's certainly not as many teams as the AFC has at the top of the heap in terms of what everyone would say the top tier teams. And every team that you would think might have a chance, you look at their quote warts, and you look at Green Bay, and you say, okay, they've got Aaron Rodgers, and they're probably going to win a lot of games. But what's that receiving core going to look like? The Buccaneers, you pointed out all about the points about them, and how's that offensive line going to hold up? That's to me, that's a real issue with that team right now. And then so it's
major issue.
It'll be a typical crazy season, I'm sure. But what will happen, as we all know, is that teams will get hit with injuries, and you can't predict what teams it'll be, what players it'll be, but there will be key injuries that will affect a certain number of teams that could have a big impact on who advances to the Super Bowl. But hey, we're here in the first few days of September, and we're talking about a game that's going to play in February. Boy, oh boy, just let it play out. Come on, just let it play out.
No, well, hey, we listen, some people are going to be going down to the Ocean Casino Resorts looking to get some action in, so trying to steer folks in the right direction. But to your point, I think there's a lot of love for Kyle Shanahan, outside of Sean McVay and maybe Bill Belichick. I think the national media at least has Kyle Shanahan up on this pedestal.
Well, they do.
Right?
There's no question they do.
And you just mentioned, though, the Bucs have question marks. I don't like their head coach. The Packers have question marks. Their head coach has won a lot of ball games, but I'll take Shanahan over him. The Cowboys, they got a terrible head coach. Mike McCarthy, give me a break. So I think maybe what people are thinking is Kyle Shanahan is that X factor. And, he wears his hat like me, so I like that about Kyle Shanahan. But
the controversy is these hats that apparently the league is making these coaches wear.
They won't let him rock it anymore,
which he's pushed back on. But you're right about that. But here's what I say. And I'm not saying Kyle Shanahan's not a good coach. Don't get me wrong. But when the 49ers have been good, and they got to the Super Bowl one year, of course, and last season, they were one step away from getting there and might have gotten there if not for a dropped interception from the arm of Matthew Stafford. And heck, we haven't even talked about the Rams. But when the 49ers have been good in Kyle Shanahan's tenure, what has been the constant? Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo.
31-11 with Jimmy G, and I think like 7-22 without him.
When he's been healthy, then they've been a good team. When he hasn't been, and that's been a good part of it, which, let's remember, led to the trade of Trey Lance, because they couldn't depend on Jimmy Garoppolo because of the injuries. And look at this, he wouldn't even be on the team now if it hadn't been for the shoulder surgery. He would have been traded months ago. So sure. I just think that, and Trey Lance might turn into this tremendous quarterback, but how many games has he played on any level in the last few years? Heck, the pandemic year, he played one game?
And I think he's played about 15 games in the last 5 years or something like that.
And then even last year when he got a chance, when Garoppolo was hurt, he got hurt. So how do we know he can stay healthy?
Howard Balzer, Philadelphia native, here on the Football Playbook with Ric Serritella. So let me ask you about the NFC tier rankings then, because I kind of see I'll put the Rams and the Bucks up there in tier 1. And then tier 2, I think it is the Packers. I think it is the 49ers. I think I'll even throw the Eagles in that mix now, because they have, outside of the quarterback, top talent all around. And I always say Jalen Hurts doesn't need to play like an all-pro. He just needs to steer the ship, guide the sails, baby. Show me the breeze. And like, that team is built to win. So where do you kind of put the Eagles in this NFC tier, so to speak?
I think they very well could be. I think that tier 2/tier 3 is pretty crowded. And that tier, and I would probably edge the Packers closer to tier 1, because Aaron Rodgers finds a way, whoever his, now granted, they don't have Devontae Adams. I remember a game when they knocked the Cardinals from the unbeaten list last year, and they didn't have Devontae Adams in that game. And they found a way to win running the football, and Aaron Rodgers throwing a whole bunch of short stuff and getting things done. So I think that's what we're going to see a lot of from that offense. So I would say they're close to there. But in those next 2 tiers, I think there's a lot of different possibilities if things go right for certain teams to move up into there. And so here's some teams I think to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is the Minnesota Vikings. One of them is the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints last year were 5-2 when Jameis Winston got hurt. Now, certainly that's banking on him. And I know Sean Payton's not there anymore, but they still have the same offensive coordinator. So if Winston can stay healthy, I think, and you talk about defense, that Saints defense is balls to the wall. So I think they have a chance to get into that second tier. The Vikings are one nobody's talking about. New coaches, new attitude. Their defense has to be better. But again, with the overall blah, if you will, about the NFC, there's a lot of teams that could potentially move into that tier. Certainly the Rams are in there. And the Arizona Cardinals here in the desert, the problem with them is they're entering the season with a bunch of guys banged up. And they're not even sure who's going to be able to play in week 1. And we know they don't have DeAndre Hopkins. And some other
How many games is Hopkins going to miss? Is it 6?
6. Now they do have Hollywood Brown, so that's a plus. The defense has a lot of depth issues. And here's the Cardinals' first 3 games. Usually they've gotten off to pretty good starts the last 2 seasons with Kyler Murray under center. Their first 3 games are Kansas City, the Raiders, and the Rams. So how do you emerge from that gauntlet? But they have a talented. I really believe they have a talented roster. But once again, it comes down to health. And they're not. They don't have serious injuries, but they have a lot of guys just banged up that might not be available for that opener against Kansas City.
Howard Balzer always got his finger on the pulse when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals. Everything football, of course, part of the NFL Draft Bible Familia, NFL Hall of Fame voter. He's got some shows on the Sirius XM channel, and I think you'll be joining us here every Football Friday to break it all down, Howard. So let's turn the attention to the AFC then. Let me pick your brain there, because that is a much more crowded conference. And just the AFC West alone, Vegas has 3 teams in the AFC West predicted to win 10 games or more. The Chiefs, the Broncos, the Chargers. You also have the Colts in the AFC. Let's not forget about the Bengals and the Ravens. Can never count out the Steelers. And then, oh, by the way, the Buffalo Bills, where the NFC is completely up for grabs. The AFC feels like the haves and the have-nots. There's probably about 8 teams that have a legitimate shot and 8 teams that have 0 shot. Agree?
No, that's definitely the case, and certainly the Bills are everybody's favorite. It's nothing original when someone predicts them to go to and win the Super Bowl. Is this their year? It very well could be. We know, obviously, as I was saying earlier, a lot of things can happen between now and February, and we also know when you get into that playoff chase in the postseason, you're playing the best teams, and crazy things can happen there. The AFC West, man, I don't know if it's in a different year, they might be able to get all 4 teams in that division in the playoffs, and that's a real stretch. But that's an unbelievable division. What are they going to do to each other when they're playing when they're playing each other? And here's an interesting thing: the AFC West matches up with the NFC West this year, so those are going to be some very interesting games. But I think
imagine if Watson was healthy though too, because that AFC North, Bengals, Ravens, Steelers, you throw a healthy Deshaun Watson in the Browns, that's in another top to bottom crazy division.
It totally is, and here's a team to keep an eye on. And again, it's sometimes hard to predict what teams with first-year head coaches, how they will do. But we've seen teams with first-year head coaches do well in past seasons. The Miami Dolphins are a team, obviously, that finished last season strong, have a whole new look. Obviously, it all depends on what happens with Tagovailoa. Is he going to play at a consistent high level? But that's a pretty good football team. And so, yeah, like you said, there's just so many good teams. And I think a lot of people might be sleeping on the Colts. You still have the Titans. We haven't even mentioned them. So this is just a bear. I mean, just look at it this way. What is it? 7 teams will make the playoffs. And there's going to be a couple teams probably that have pretty good records that won't even be in the postseason. And you mentioned that prediction that 3 teams will win 10 games. I mean, last year, 2 of them did. And the Chargers, won 9 and lost that last game of the regular season against the Raiders to see who gets in the playoffs. And hey, how about this? They play again. They play on opening week. So they played in the final game of the entire season in the NFL last year in a wild Sunday night game. And now they open the season playing each other in what's the beginning of that AFC West gauntlet.
I need to know what's the over-under.
I love that word, by the way, gauntlet.
Yeah, it is a gauntlet. And I need to know what's the over-under for how many 4th downs Brandon Staley will go for it in that case.
And you probably can't make that number high enough.
Well, let me ask you this before we let you go, Howard. We saw the Russell Wilson contract come down the wire. Obviously, there in Arizona, Kyler Murray got his money. A lot of chatter about Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. Are they worth top dollar? What do you think? How does the market play out for those 2 guys?
The Hurts situation is an interesting one because obviously he has to continue ascending, playing at a high level to warrant that type of money. And that will be from the Eagles' standpoint. Is this the guy that we want leading us for the next 10 years? And if you decide that he is, then most of the time you're going to have to pay the guy. And that's just the way it is. The Lamar Jackson situation, I don't think he's being very smart, not having an agent. And maybe that's his gambit. I don't know. Maybe to be the franchise player for a couple of years and then try to hit it big after that. But you'll be well underpaid for those 2 years when you're talking about guys making $40 million plus. If for the next 2 years, counting this year, well, even the next 3 years, if they decide to franchise him, he'd make 23 and then about 27 and then over 30 in the 3rd year. So that's a lot less than averaging $40 million a year. So I don't think that's a good situation. And it's good for the teams that Wilson did not get the fully guaranteed contract like Deshaun Watson did. But here's my point. Russell Wilson's in a different stage of his career than Deshaun Watson. When you are dealing with those quarterbacks in the 25, 26 year range, and you're signing them to a 5-year deal, whatever it might be, does it really matter if the money's guaranteed? Unless the guy falls off the earth or has a catastrophic injury that ends his career, you're going to pay the guy anyway. What you're doing is guaranteeing base salaries. So those players, a big part of it. So those players are going to get their money anyway on a 5-year deal. So I think that's one of the most overhyped, not important stories about a fully guaranteed contract for a quarterback over 5 years, especially when it's a younger guy. But look at what happened with Derek Carr and Russell Wilson. They didn't get the fully guaranteed because they're at different stages of your career. And so you're not going to guarantee that kind of money. So what'll be interesting, like you said, how does the Jackson situation play out? Jalen Hurts next year, next offseason, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert will be eligible for contract extensions. You know that those agents are going to be pushing for that 45, 46 million a year. So the dollars are only going to go up for those franchise quarterbacks who obviously, like I said, are in those earlier stages of their career.
And the salary cap's going to go up about 20
That's
to 25 million per year in each of the next 2 seasons because of all this new TV revenue. So these annual dollar contracts are just going to go up, going up on a Tuesday. And I think the NFL, all the owners and GMs around the league exhaled with a sigh of relief when Russell Wilson wasn't guaranteed the entire contract. So we're running out of time, Howard.
Not only TV money, real quick, not only TV money, but that little deal right up there in the corner, the gambling money that's going to be coming into these teams is going to be going through the roof. How long that's going to take where it's huge, who knows? But it's coming very soon.
Yeah, shout out to Ocean Casino Resorts in Atlantic City. Shout out to our next guest, who will be Bob Wiley, waiting patiently in the green room. Before we let you boogie, Howard, I think we'll have you back here next Friday for another Football Friday affair. Tell the listening audience at home what you got cooking. You got any shows going on this weekend? Where can we find you?
Well, the Hall of Fame radio show on Sirius XM. It's run already, but they rerun it, and so it's always fun doing that show. But this weekend, kind of just going to be sitting back. It's a rare week without NFL football. Should be some good college football games, and just enjoying a few days of taking a deep breath before it all starts hitting the fan next week.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend is here. I'm sure we'll be chatting over the course of the next few days, but always love talking football with you, Howard, and we'll do it again next week, my man.
Looks good, Rick. Thanks. Take care.
All right, there you go.